Hi everyone, welcome to the Preservation Resource Center's class for today, June 12th. I want to welcome everyone today. Thank you for being here with us to learn more about how to care for your historic house. I want to do a quick shout out to thank our sponsors today. Stephen Richard Carnes has been sponsoring our live online programming while we've all been stuck at home. So thank you to Stephen. Thank you also to all of our members. I see there are a number of members in the audience today. Your membership dollars are what make programming like this possible. The PRC is so grateful to all of our members for supporting not only the online programming that we're doing, but all of the work that we do from our Revival Grants program to our advocacy work to protect the historic tax credit. So thank you for making all of that possible. Also, if you're not yet a member of the PRC, please consider joining. In addition to making all of that work possible, you also receive the incredible award-winning Preservation in Print magazine delivered to your door 9 times a year. And you also receive discounts on all sorts of wonderful things, from merchandise to events. We also do exclusive member events online and in person when we can. So please consider joining today if you're not a member yet. So for those of you that are watching today in Zoom, please note that your camera is off and your mic is off, but we're still happy to hear from you guys. So if you have any questions, please type them in on the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. If you have any technical problems, please feel free to put it in the chat for me, and I can help you, try to help you walk through anything. If you're watching us today on Facebook, thank you. If you would like to ask questions next time, join through Zoom, but please do share our content. We want as many people to know about all sorts of things about historic preservation as possible. So I want to thank Brooke Cranford of Brooke Cranford Designs for being with us today to talk to us about paint color selection. This is such an interesting topic in historic preservation because a lot of people are really passionate about their paint colors, but don't often know how to channel that passion for the colors that they would like to have in their house. And it makes such a difference in the way we experience our historic architecture. So Brooke is an expert in all things design, but her touch for color is really pretty special, and she has worked on a number of historic properties throughout New Orleans, including some that have been on PRC tours and featured, houses that have been on Shotgun House Tour and featured at our Beams and Brews events, some of which she'll talk a little bit about today. So without further ado, I want to introduce Brooke and let her tell you guys all about paint.
Thank you, Serena. I'm going to make sure that you can see my screen. Let's see. Okay, is it working?
It is working.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for having me. This is a fun one to do. Paint is something that just makes a world of difference in the interior and the exterior of your home. But it's also something that can be completely overwhelming to people, especially if you're walking into a paint store and you see 1,000 colors in front of you. So I'm hoping that today I can give you some tips as to how to narrow it down, how to select colors that are appropriate for your architecture, but they're also a reflection of you as a person, of your style and of your taste. And because the options are so limitless with paint, it's a great way to express who you are, who you want, how you want your home to appear to other people, and like what you want to surround yourself with on a daily basis. So the first slide, what I want to do is just sort of give you an outline of what we're going to talk about, just so you know what to expect. And we're going to have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end. In most instances, I have provided the paint color as a little text at the bottom of each image if I know the paint color. If not, some of the pictures are my personal pictures, some images are from the PRC. So if you have questions about that, please ask Serena at the end and I'll see if I can answer those. So first we're going to talk about where do I begin. As I mentioned, it's completely overwhelming. And so the goal is to edit and narrow down the choices before you test them on your walls and make a decision. So we'll go through what you should be considering for your exteriors, what you should consider for your interiors, any paint regulations that might affect your decision. Those will be based on your location and if you're using tax credits or not. Any clarifications that you might want to work through with your paint contractor, and the idea of getting like 3 to 5 concept photos and narrowing down what you want your home to look like as a source of inspiration, and some recommendations for how to test your paint colors. So let's see, let me move this over real quick. So where do I begin? There are 4 paint manufacturers that you might be familiar with. Sherwin-Williams is one, Benjamin Moore is another one, Farrow and Ball, and there's a new one online called Clear Paint. You may have seen advertisements for it on your Instagram account. So I typically use Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore, and that is it really has to do with the general contractor that I'm working with on the particular project and their paint sub and who he wants to use. So with Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore, you probably have seen, your fan deck with all these different colors where you've gone into the paint store. So Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore are both well-known manufacturers. Helm Paint is the Benjamin Moore supplier in New Orleans. And they have the most options by far. Farrow and Ball is a higher end paint company. Their paint is beautiful. It has a great pigment quality. They have more of what I would call a capsule collection. So if you are looking at me right now, I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but they've narrowed down some paint choices. This is a UK company. If you find a Farrow and Ball paint color that you love, just know that any paint color that you find, Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore can both match it. So if you fall in love with a clear paint color or Farrow and Ball or Bear or whoever, and your painter says, oh, we have to use Benjamin Moore or Sherwin-Williams, just know that that paint color can be matched. So don't let that, get in the way of finding your perfect color. Benjamin Moore and Sherwin-Williams also have in the back of your fan deck and in their stores, they have a historical collection. So this is a great way, it's right here in the back of your paint deck. This is a great way to, if you specifically want if you're trying to replicate a color that has already been on your house, or if you want to start with a historical color, that's a good place to start. So I would say utilize the stores that we have in New Orleans or wherever you're located. You might not even be in New Orleans watching this, but those 2 places are a good place to start. And they also have wonderful online resources. So look at their websites, because the paint manufacturers have great recommendations for color palettes. So don't just look at the store, look at their websites, because they're really, they're very, very helpful places to start. So let's go through some exterior considerations that you might have. If you are looking to paint the entirety of your house, one thing that's helpful to do is to consider first your architecture. So when I say that, I'm thinking in terms of what architectural elements are prominent on your home. So you may live in a bracketed shotgun where you have lots of elements. You have the brackets, you have your window casing, shutters, cornices above your windows. There's lots of elements that could potentially have different paint colors. So you also want to consider your neighborhood. So you may be in a neighborhood, you may be on a street that has a ton of colorful houses, and you want to make sure that you are painting your house to sort of go with the overall feel of your street or of your neighborhood. So if you're in, say, the Marigny, for instance, which is known for its bright colors, you have a little more, I think, leeway there. You can paint your home whatever color you want to, unless you're in the VCC. So it doesn't necessarily have to be dictated by your home, but I think it is nice to think about how your home is how it relates to buildings next to it, across the street from it, and how your street looks overall, because the streetscape is such an important part of architecture and of New Orleans. So consider your neighbors when doing that, because it may be that you have 3 blue homes in a row. You love the color blue for your home, but you don't want to be the 4th blue home on your block. So consider that. The other consideration that you might want to make is, like, where are you on your street? So for instance, can y'all see, let's see, I hope you can see my mouse here. This is a row of shotguns. Y'all are probably very familiar with it on Magazine Street. So all you're seeing from the street is the front elevation. So you have the ability to have a little bit more fun with the colors that you select here. So versus this is a home that's in the Lower Garden District on the corner of Josephine and Coliseum. And it's a corner lot. So, you know, painting this entire home electric yellow might not be the best idea. So this was a more neutral color scheme given its location in the city, and also its the quantity of house in terms of the amount of siding, the amount of shutters. It just needed to be a more neutral color, just to sort of respect the neighborhood and the buildings that were around it. So what we're trying to do with the exterior is figure out what elements you want to highlight. Maybe it's just your door. Maybe you want to do a neutral color palette and you just want a bright door. But maybe you want a brighter color palette. Then what we're going to do is look at, like, where do you apply those bright colors so that you can create balance and repetition. So this is a before and after of that same house, and you can see the original color and the new color are similar in shade. They're not really dark. It's not a, you know, just a bright white. The color has changed, but in terms of like the overall saturation, it's very similar. Besides the like major renovation that happened on this house, because we're just talking about paint, the body of the house, which is the siding, is a color called Early Morning Mist. And what's great about it is that it has sort of like a creamy undertone, like almost a gray undertone, which gives it a slight contrast to the white trim that we used. But it's not a harsh contrast. And where the interest comes in this house is with this, besides the beautiful architecture in terms of color, is with the shutters. And there are a lot of shutters. There were not originally. The homeowner, it was very important to the homeowner to have the shutters on here, well, for privacy, but also because it's just beautiful along the Coliseum side of the property, because otherwise, you know, a lot of windows and the shutters really add to it. So they chose to use the accent color in this home as the shutters, and for that we chose Adirondack green, which is a really pretty green. In the sample, it almost looks sort of like a sage green, but in person it's much brighter. And we're going to talk about the difference between what paint looks like as a sample versus what it looks like in person, which is why it's so important to test. We tested several greens for this, and they were really happy with this color. I think it turned out really well. So another exterior consideration, New Orleans and all over the place has different architectural styles. Some homes have a ton of elements. So the bracketed shotgun on the left is an Italianate style. So we have these beautiful arched shutters. These are not homes that I've done. These are pictures from the PRC. So I don't know these exact colors. I could guess and give you some choices if you wanted to find that exact color match. But these are just good examples of where the paint chosen, I think, really works well with architecture. So the home on the left with the really bright blue shutters is a great example of how they have taken several paint colors and sort of spread them across the front of the house in an appropriate way. So their main color, the body of the home, is this sort of bright pink. And then their accent colors that they've used, the primary one is the blue, but then this sort of turquoise acts as a a third element. And what's great is that they've used it here on these coins. They've used it along the cornice here, and they've also used it on the gable. And sort of by triangulating those colors, they've created a sense of interest, because your eye moves all over the place, but they've also created balance because they've been able to use it in multiple places. This is just a great house, and a good example of how, you know, with just 4 paint colors, they have a ton of interest on the house. The house in the middle is beautiful. I love this picture because it's a good example of using just one really bright accent color. So they've chosen to accent their door. It's a beautiful door, and I like the red that they've chosen. They've also been able to sort of highlight a few features on their house. This is a house that has these grouped columns on the front. So they've chosen to use more of like a neutral, like a pastel siding color, which looks beautiful. And it also creates a little bit of contrast against their trim color, which is sort of a creamy white. And so they've chosen to, instead of painting the columns the same color as the house, they've painted these columns the trim color. So you create this sort of subtle contrast between the house and the siding. So it's highlighting those architectural elements. And while this home just at first glance appears a little more like tailored than the home on the left, they've done a really good job of essentially creating enough contrast to highlight their architectural elements. And so if they would have painted this archway the same color as the siding, it would have faded into the siding. So instead they chose like this contrast to bring that out, and then the door really pops. Another thing that's beautiful about this picture is that they've considered their landscaping. So their trees are in bloom, which is great to consider, you know, what does your landscaping look like when it's in bloom? So this pink that they have, I think this is a Japanese magnolia, but I'm not a landscape architect. So it looks beautiful against their siding. So considering their other options, it looks really pretty. What I like about this third image for an exterior example is that they've chosen a brighter white trim. And I normally don't choose that, but in this particular instance, it looks great because they have a yellow body on their house. And so using a creamier trim with a yellow body isn't going to give you that pop. So this color combination works really well for a few reasons. They have the yellow siding, which is beautiful. It's a great shade of yellow. It's not like an electric yellow. It has a little bit of warmth to it. And they've highlighted their door, which is a great 2-panel door. And then their porch ceiling is more of a turquoise color. And then they, again, had shutters like the other home. So they were able to add another color. But you may not have shutters on your home, and that's okay, because you probably have some really pretty windows. So say your home looks like this, and you're like, I don't have shutters, I can't afford shutters, they're expensive. What you can do is paint the window sash the accent color. So you could do the body a color, the exterior, the front door a color, and then maybe use a third color like they did, but put it on the actual sash itself. And that way you're able to highlight what you have in your architecture. These are 2 more examples of great use of color and repetition. So the home on the left has some beautiful rafter tails here that are painted, and it's really pretty stucco work up here. So these are good examples of using multiple colors, but using them in the right way. So one thing that I might not do with these homes is say, okay, I'm going to paint this whole section one color, and I'm going to paint this whole section one color and make it blocky looking. What you want to do instead is pick 3 colors or 4 and spread them throughout your architecture. So things are, different elements are being painted the same color. So you can see on the, I'm really hoping y'all can see my mouse, I'm not sure. You can see on this home, they have this element and then the smaller version of that painted, you know, the same color throughout. And then, so they're using only, sorry, I'm seeing, here we go. It looks like a ton of color, but really it's only four paint colors. So I just think these are great examples of what to do with your paint colors for exterior. Let's see. So the other thing, besides what you're painting on your house, there are other elements that are going to play a part in how your home looks. So you always want to consider what your roof is made of. So a lot of times you'll have like an architectural shingle, which is typically a neutral color, so not something to like worry too much about in terms of paint. But a lot of times we'll see these terracotta ridge tiles. Sometimes we'll see entire roofs made of terracotta. So that brings in an orangey element. So you want to be aware of that. This home is actually from my friend Marcy. This is on her Instagram, and I had to ask her if I could use it because it's just a great example of what we're talking about in terms of making sure that you're considering your existing architectural features. So these terracotta ridge tiles are beautiful, but they've done a great job. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the body of their home is sort of like a warm peach color, which ties in nicely to those ridge tiles. And then they have this accent color up here. So you're sort of triangulating your colors, and you're also able to highlight your other elements. So that's one thing to consider. Brick is often something to consider as well. Your foundation or your steps or your stoop, your sidewalk may even be made of brick. And in New Orleans, we have brick that has a lot of color in it. And it can be brought out if you want to. So like, for instance, I was trying to find a picture of a home that I did recently, and where we used this particular brick, and then we picked up on this accent color for the body of the house, and it turned out really well. So if you have brick that has a lot of texture to it and a lot of color to it, like, just keep it in mind, because you may be able to pull a color from there for the body of your house or for an accent. And when you consider those elements like your roof and your brick, your metalwork, it helps your home look even more cohesive. The other thing that I love about this particular home is the landscaping. Again, like the colors that they chose look great with the amount of green that they have for their landscaping. So a lot of times I get the question, I really want to paint my house white. And there are so many white options. And white seems like it would be an easy thing to do, but it's not, because there are hundreds of different whites and they all have different undertones. Some have a gray undertone. Some can even turn pink, which you in most instances want to avoid unless you want a peachy or a pink house. The biggest tip that I have for white is to not use a super, super bright white on the entirety of your house. The picture in the middle, this paint color, I think it's decorator's white. It's like it can sometimes read as a primer, which you really, it could be beautiful on many homes. I just think if you want a more subtle white, using something that has a little bit of a yellow or a gray undertone is going to still give you a white house without it being super bright. It's just going to sort of tone it down and make it a little bit more approachable when you're using that much white on a house. So the home to the left is on DeFawcett. This is a project I worked on a few years ago with my good friend Danielle, and this was a total renovation. We did the interiors as well, but she wanted to do white on the exterior of her home for a few reasons. First of all, she just loves that look. The home was actually white before this, but also she has these beautiful art glass windows. And so that architectural feature really needed to be highlighted. And so in order to do that, white was really the best option for this. She also recently landscaped. It looks beautiful. And she chose landscaping that pulls out the blues in her windows. And she chose these great blue planters. So there are ways to bring even more color to the exterior besides just paint. So if you think about the landscaping and even the lighting, like these copper bevel lights are beautiful. So I think this was a successful way to do white on the outside. White is also appropriate for this type of architecture, which is neoclassical revival. So white was just a good option here. The other home on the right is in Bayou St. John. And it was also originally white, but it had, I'll show you the before picture on the next slide, but it had like a high contrast trim. So this color is called silver satin, and it is a white, but it's actually like really a light gray. But when you're painting this much of it, it still appears white. This picture isn't great in terms of showing you how we did a little bit darker trim. So around the windows and around the door, we actually went 3 shades darker. So we do have a little bit of contrast, and we did a darker front door and side door for this. But when you look at it compared to this picture right here, you can see that while it's white, using these warmer undertones really helps just make it a little bit cozier. So let's go to the next. Here are the before and afters. This is the before of Danielle's house, and this is the after. So we really respected, the original condition of it in terms of the color. All of the windows are there, the stained glass windows, the original doors, and we painted the porch a little bit darker. And I think it just really freshens it up. This is the before of this house in Bayou St. John. You can see the trim was darker. These rafter tails were darker. And we removed the awnings and gave it a fresh coat of paint. We also moved the lighting up. But yeah, I think it's a good example of what a white house can be. And this is where we started with it. I was ordering these larger paint samples. We sort of narrowed it down. And then after we ordered the paint samples and narrowed it down to these colors, then we tested it. So, and then after testing, we approved it. So we have the siding a little bit darker for the window and door trim. And then we did a super dark door, a light blue porch ceiling. And then the porch floor was this, I think it's Collingwood is the name of that one. Okay. This is, if you have a brick house, this is a good example of a before and after of a brick. This is actually a condo complex that I worked on with Michelle Duhan of Bayou Preservation. It's on Napoleon. So the before was sort of brown on brown on brown, and we renovated this and chose to paint the brick white. So one thing to consider when you're painting brick is that you want to do a masonry primer before you paint the brick. And you also really want to test it, because what a paint color looks like on wood is gonna look different on brick. It's gonna look different on each material that you use because of the way that, especially in the exterior, because of the way shadows will appear, and like different substrates take paint differently. So when you're painting brick, you really want to make sure that your specification, not just with the color, but with the actual paint itself, is correct. So brick is something you really want to work through before you just throw some paint on there. And I think this is a good before and after, and this really brightened it up. So, okay, now my favorite part, which is interiors. So while the exterior is something that you want to approach in terms of your architecture and where you are on the street, and it also needs to reflect your personal style. The interior, I feel like you can have a little more fun with, and the interior of your home is something that, in my opinion, just really needs to reflect your own personal style. So It gets a little more complicated with the interior because you have more to consider in terms of other elements that are going to be in the inside of your home. So, and it is also just a very personal choice. Paint acts to me as a backdrop for everything else that's in your home. So it's really just one of many elements. So one thing to consider when you're trying to figure out where to start with, like say you're painting all the rooms in your house, or you're just painting your dining room, you really need to think of something that helps is just to think about like, what do you love? What is your, this picture is a great example of, this is a vacation picture, not of my vacation, unfortunately. But it's something that in your head you have maybe like an image of, oh, this street in Italy, I loved the colors there. Or, I visited California and there's a color that has stuck with you and makes you happy. So you can start there. You can also start by exploring like your own personal style. So look in your closet, what colors do you wear a lot? Do you wear bright, fun colors? Are you're not scared of that? Or are you the kind of person that loves like a neutral wardrobe with like pops of like really great jewelry or accessories? So maybe you want to, on your walls, do like a dark gray or a white or a neutral. And then, so your paint acts as the background because you have like this great art and you have a lot of, maybe fun fabric or pillows, for other elements of your interior. So in that case, maybe a neutral paint color is the way to go for you. So, just consider what you gravitate to naturally, what you're drawn to, and then consider selecting paint that emulates that. For me personally, I draw inspiration from art a lot. So this picture in the middle is an artist that I love. And she does a great job of combining colors. So a lot of times I'll look for her, like if I'm just kind of in a rut in terms of color combination, I have some artists that I follow on Instagram, some art that I have in my house, and artists are experts at combining color. So especially if you are painting the entire interior of your house and you're like, I don't want to paint it all white. I want to, make each room a little bit differently. Look to art because you'll find unexpected color combinations that you might not necessarily think of in your head, but, you can use art as a way to take it to the next step and start experimenting with different color combinations. It may be that you have a lot of antiques in your house. So you have a lot of brown furniture, which I love antiques. So, you may want to consider like what colors are going to make those antiques pop, what colors are going to make those antiques, like bring them into, 2020. So you may not necessarily want to do like a taupe wall color if you're going to have a lot of antiques in your home. Maybe you want to do something like a coral, or like I love this image right here where it's like sort of a chartreuse green, and it elevates your antiques and just sort of makes it a little bit more modern. Jewelry is another place to find color inspiration. You may have a rug that you love. So just look outside of the paint store for color inspiration. Look at your surroundings, look at what you're drawn to, and sort of go from there. You don't just have to like stand in front of a paint deck and close your eyes and pick a color. Like work with what you have in your home, what makes you happy in your home, and then try to draw colors from there if at all possible. So when you're considering what elements to paint in your home, we often in historic homes, what's great about them is you're going to have some millwork. So you're probably going to have beautiful casings. You're going to have some thicker baseboards. You're probably going to have picture rail. You may have medallions. So you want to think, do I want my wall paint color and my moldings to create contrast, or do I want to paint them sort of similar tones to create texture? So there's really two ways you can approach that. And it really is just dependent upon the overall look that you're going for. So Benjamin Moore on their website has this visualizer that's really helpful. Now, keep in mind what you see on the computer screen is never going to be the exact same that's going to be on your wall. So don't say, oh, this looked great on the visualizer, let's go ahead and order, 10 gallons of paint and paint. Don't do that. Just test it in the situation first. But this will help you narrow it down. So you can go to Benjamin Moore's website. They have different room configurations. So I picked a living room as the example for this, and then I picked 2 colors. And I did the trim color and the wall color the same. And this is sort of what it showed me. Your trim color is going to be a certain finish. So it's going to be a semi-gloss, and your wall, it may be a semi-gloss, but will most likely be like a satin finish. So you can have you can have the same color side by side, but you can use different finishes of the paint to create contrast. This room to the right actually ended up having grass cloth on the wall, but we really wanted to highlight the millwork. I mean, it was just beautiful with the Greek key here. And so we created some contrast and painted all of the millwork an accent color to basically draw attention to it. You could also paint your medallion. You can paint your medallion the same color as your ceiling, but do it in a different finish if you wanted to. But there are lots of different options. But the main thing that you will find in your home for interiors in terms of painting is going to be the millwork. So just really something to think about in terms of creating contrast or creating a textural look with it. When you are redoing your home, you may be under like a complete renovation, or you may just be doing some cosmetic work. A lot of times what's happening in historic homes is that you will find that your millwork has been painted over and over and over again over the past 120 years. So every time it gets a layer of paint, the detail just starts fading away because the paint is building up on it. So you may want to consider stripping whatever piece it is down to, like this fireplace mantle was stripped all the way down to the wood and then given one coat of paint. So that way all of the detail and the wood carving right above the hearth, you can see it pops because it's fresh and clean, and it's not like you're just adding another layer of paint to the top. If you are trying to restore your house and you are saying, I want to bring this paint color back to what it originally was, you can do what's called a paint analysis. I would recommend hiring a professional to do that, where they can scrape away each layer and tell you, the exact colors that were used over the course of time in your home. And then you can choose that as a starting point for your paint, or you can just know that it's just sort of part of the history of your home. And a paint analysis is a great way to kind of figure out who the people were that lived there before. And it's a great avenue if you do want to bring it back to an exact color. But also stripping your millwork is just a good way to brighten it up and to really bring out the detail. One thing that you want to consider is that you will probably have lead-based paint when you're doing this, so I would not recommend doing this yourself. You will run into lead-based paint if your home has some age to it or it's a historical home. So don't undertake this without research or hiring somebody who is a lead abatement specialist. So up next we have, for the interior, one thing to consider is you may have some beautiful stained millwork, which is, so many people paint it. And my personal preference is to not paint it because you can't take it back. I mean, it's going to be an expense to strip the paint later and stain it again. So I would recommend, if you're on the fence about your stained millwork, to paint your walls and paint your ceiling first, and then see, oh, I really like it, or okay, I still want to paint it. And that's fine, it's your home, paint it whatever you want to paint it. But there is real beauty in leaving your stained millwork stained. I mean, it's on trend, I know, to paint it all white, but I would highly discourage going in there and doing that right away. So this is a home that is a craftsman style home where we did an addition off the back. So and this color is called Duxbury Gray, if you want that color. This is all new on the back, but we were able to use the existing windows. So where we pushed the wall back. So then we reused the existing windows, and the client wanted this all, the back of the house to be white. So what we did is paint the window sashes an accent color so that they were able to be highlighted, and you could draw attention to them. This fireplace, this is a separate house. In this dining room, we decided to create some drama. They had these beautiful chandeliers that stayed with the home. And in order to draw attention to those, we chose a dark wall color and a dark ceiling color for this dining room. And I think it really helped that chandelier pop. The color here is called Grizzle Gray. And you can see these are both grays. But the Duxbury Gray has some green undertones to it. And then the Grizzle Gray is just more like a true kind of charcoal color. We also painted the fireplace. We painted everything in here. So another thing that you may run into is like, do I also paint the door and the casing? I would have loved to have painted this entire room, just this gray. We stopped and did not paint this door, but I love painting the walls and the trim the same color, but just a different finish. So the fireplace is painted in a semi-gloss finish. The walls are painted in a satin finish. So while it's the same color, the finish creates a little bit of interest because it changes the way the light reflects it. So a few options for some interior considerations for wall treatments that you use paint for are Diane Colleen is somebody that I use a lot. She's so wonderful and incredibly talented. She can do everything. She's based in New Orleans. She can do everything from gilding to Venetian plaster. The image on the left is a Venetian plaster hood that we did for a client where she was able to use paint in a way that created more interest and depth. So this is plaster, and then she tints the plaster and does like all these layers, and just, I mean, it's just an amazing skill that she has. She also did this fireplace for a client in the Marigny, and she was able to use paint to create like interest and texture, and we wanted this to sort of replicate like an older metal kind of look, and she was able to do that. So, and then Michelle Duhan with Body Preservation. This is one of her projects actually, but it was just a good example of how she was able to lime wash an exposed brick fireplace to create some interest and some contrast against the white walls. And I think that turned out really well. So one thing that you may run into is if you are doing tax credits, you will run into some regulations. And if you are in the View Carré, you will run into regulations. So the View Carré they will not select your paint color for you. They will tell you yes or no with the paint that you're presenting to them. So there is a document that's really helpful on NOLA.gov, and it's all about selecting paint colors if you are in the View Carré. So they even explain like the types of paint that you need to use. They explain what hues you need to use where. So where you want to, what paint you might want to use for the body of your home versus the shutters and all of that. There's a really helpful document called the View Carré Exterior Colors. These are not colors that, this is a starting point. This is not something that the VCC has put out. This is something that Sherwin-Williams provides that's just a starting point for colors for the View Carré. It is found at the Sherwin-Williams store in the French Quarter. So if you have a home there, or if you just love the colors in the French Quarter and you want to use some of those colors in your own home, wherever you are, this is a great starting point, this little pamphlet. It's not online. It's something you need to go and pick up. But if you ask for the exterior colors, they will be able to give this to you. The other issue that you will run into is if you are doing a tax credit for federal or state, they do not specify colors, but they do want you to keep the same type of coating. So if you have stained wood, they want you to keep the wood stained. If you have a lime washed fireplace, they want that type of coating to remain. So they don't want you to go from a stained wood to a painted wood, or from a painted wood to a like a paint. They don't say you have a fireplace and it has plaster on it and it's painted. They don't want you to expose the brick. They want you to leave the plaster on the fireplace, and then you can paint it whatever color you want to. So that is something to consider if you're using tax credits. So I'm a big fan of testing, and in the past year, a company has come out that creates stickable test patches, essentially, of Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moore, and Farrow and Ball. And I think it's called Samplies. I guess that's how you say that. But what's great about this is that instead of going to the paint store and buying $10 sample buckets and then getting your paintbrush out and painting it, you can instead order samples, and it's made with 2 coats of the exact color that you've specified. You can put it on your wall, you can take it away, you can put it in another room. So it's really, I wish they would have thought of this sooner. I think it's a great product. And it's like $6 per patch. So the investment that you have to, put in is not much to get the correct paint color. So I would look that up if you're interested in testing your paint colors. Designers also have the ability to order really large paint samples, which I do a lot of. So this is just a picture of me like laying out exterior paint options for a few houses. And a lot of times what I'll do is if you're trying to figure out how to, oh, we're running out of time. I'm going to make this real fast. Basically, the point is you want to test, narrow it down to 3, test those 3, look at them in the sunlight at night, with a lamp. If it's inside and you're in a construction project and you're sampling out your colors, which you may want to do is bring a lamp in there, bring some incandescent lighting, because what it's going to look like in a construction site versus what it's going to look like when you have your lighting in, your lamps, and like all of your accent lighting, it's going to be a little bit different. So try to do that as much as possible. Questions to ask your painter. So it's always a great idea, whether your GC is going to be figuring out your paint, or if you're working directly with a painter, you want to get a clear understanding of what is included in their scope. So are they sanding? Are they taking your walls back down to the wood, or are for an exterior, are they priming? Are they doing 2 coats? Like, just make sure that all of that's included. If you want a 0 VOC paint, VOC is a volatile organic compound. So when you get that new paint smell, sometimes it gives people headaches. If you want a 0 one, Benjamin Moore makes one, and Sherwin-Williams makes one. The Emerald line and the Aura line, I think, are their 0 VOC paints. So make sure to ask for that. You want to make sure they warranty their work. You want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the timeline. You want to make sure that, if you are purchasing the paint or if they're purchasing the paint, and always look for references. I'm sorry, Sherwin-Williams is the Harmony line. Benjamin Moore is the Aura, not the Emerald line. A question that your painter will 100% ask you is, what sheen do you want for your paint? So as a rule of thumb, so the flat paint finish is going to hide the most, but the higher the sheen, the more you can scrub it. So as a starting point, you typically, this changes based on design, but you want to use flat on your ceiling. You want to use eggshell or satin on your walls. You want to use semi-gloss or high gloss for your trim. So where this varies is if you have, say you have walls that have a lot of texture on them, or you have walls that are just old and there's maybe some cracking and you're just kind of like touching it up, maybe use a flat, because the flat finish is going to hide the most. Just know that it's not going to be as scrubbable as maybe a semi-gloss or a satin. But if you are trying to get like a high gloss look on your wall, or if you're going to put wallpaper on your wall, you need to make sure that you have perfect drywall. I'm talking like level 5, beautifully done drywall. So, or else it's not going to work. You're going to see every little imperfection and it's going to drive you nuts. So just make sure that the drywall finish matches the paint finish, and you can look to your painter for recommendations for this. They should be able to say, this is appropriate for this application, or this is not appropriate for that application. So when you're providing the paint specifications to your painter or your general contractor, a good tip is to provide an image of the paint color next to the paint, because some manufacturers have similar names. So like Benjamin Moore may have a crimson red and Sherwin-Williams has a crimson red, and they may mix it up. So, and it's not going to be the same paint. So always put the location, the paint name, and the paint number. So every paint name will have a number associated with it. And it's sort of like a checks and balances. You want to put the manufacturer, so whichever manufacturer you want to use. If you care about the quality of the paint, you want to specify, I want Aura, or I want Emerald, like, because what's going to happen is if you don't specify it, they may slide in the same color, but not the highest quality. A great painter will not do that, but there are some out there that will go to Home Depot and buy the cheapest paint and just get them to match the color that you wanted. So just be aware of that, especially with the exterior. Do not use cheap paint because it will fade, and it's just not worth it. You're paying too much to have your house painted anyway, or not too much. You're paying a lot to have it painted. And then you're also going to want to specify the finish. So semi-gloss, satin, that sort of thing. It's also helpful to take, this is a before and after, this is the house that we did in the Lower Garden District. And you want to maybe just like take an arrow and point like, I want this painted, I want that painted. Go walk around with your painter and specify, I want this painted this color, this painted that color. There's not, you can't over communicate which parts you want painted what color. I mean, it's just, you don't want to be surprised when you go to look at it. So this is a great house for a before and after. So these are some of my favorite colors that I use. I mean, don't be scared of color. It's amazing. Some sort of go-tos for like the background colors that I use a lot of, not the siding, not the accent, but like trim. I use alabaster, Sherwin-Williams alabaster all the time. I use it for exterior trim. I use it for interior trim. I use it for walls. It is a wonderful, wonderful white. It doesn't turn pink. It doesn't turn gray. I mean, it's just, I love this color. For porch ceilings, I prefer a blue that is not like in your face blue. This is Patriotic White by Benjamin Moore. It's a very, very pale icy blue, but it's beautiful for a porch ceiling. My recommendation for a porch floor is paint it the color of dirt, because if you paint your porch floor too dark, you see footprints. If you paint it too light, you see mud. So if you want a low maintenance porch floor, like paint it sort of a neutral gray color, and that's like the most low maintenance. And then I love using brighter colors for window sashes, for powder rooms, for like little areas that just need like a pop of something special, for shutters. And then I love using darker colors in bedrooms and dining rooms because it just makes it so like cozy and intimate. But everybody has different opinions. So don't be scared to use color. Don't be scared to really like try new things with paint. But do know that what it looks like on a paint chip is not what it's going to look like on the wall. So if you want a bright color, look at the paint deck and say you're like, oh, I love this geranium. Test one lighter than it because it's going to be very, very bright. on your walls, which is fine if that's what you want. But always like pick the color that you think you like and then go a shade lighter is another little tip. So Serena, I think that's all I have. If you all want to email me any questions, this is my email address, and I can answer any questions that have come through as well.
Fantastic. We definitely do have some questions. Thank you, Brooke. That was fantastic. Okay, so some questions have come through about some of the images you've shown. Someone was asking what's the name of the color that was used on a yellow home from the beginning of the slideshow. You had 3 houses up, and I know that.
Yeah, that was an image from that the PRC gave me because I thought it was a good example. But let me just pull up my paint right now, and I'll give you a few that you might want to try. So, okay, I'm looking at Benjamin Moore right now. There is a yellow called Halifax Cream by Benjamin Moore that's really beautiful that I think would be pretty close to that yellow. It's number 344. There's also a color that you might want to try called Vanilla Cookie by Benjamin Moore, which is number 372. So Vanilla Cookie, 372, and what was the other one I said? Halifax Cream. Those are 2 good yellows that you might want to try.
Thank you. Someone else would like to know if you can tell us what company makes the Adirondack green color that you used on the shutters on Josephine Street.
That's Benjamin Moore. Benjamin Moore, Adirondack green.
And do you have any thoughts on paint type or color choices for concrete block foundations?
So if you are going to do something like that, concrete block, so you'd probably have like a hardy above it, and maybe you're going to paint that like a brighter color. With a concrete block, essentially you want to think about how it looks from the street. So I never paint the bottom of houses lighter than the top of the house, because you always want visually the bottom of the house, you want the house to feel grounded. So I would use like a darker taupe color, like a darker neutral, because it's going to be next to dirt, so it's going to get dirty. It's going to probably have some landscaping in front of it, and you kind of just want that to go away. So I would choose something like this. I'm kind of being, I don't know what color you're going to paint the actual house, but like a darker taupe or a darker gray, like this River Reflections. You could even go like a blue gray, but I would definitely go like a darker neutral color to ground it and to just kind of make it go away and let your architecture shine, not the concrete block.
Great, thank you. Okay, so you sort of touched on this a little bit at some point in your presentation, but someone's asking if you have any recommendations for a brick porch that was painted by a previous owner, and they're concerned about whether or not their bricks need to breathe, and whether or not they should repaint if the paint is chipping now.
Oh gosh, that's kind of something that I'd like to see in person. So brick is made to breathe, especially old New Orleans brick. And Serena, you can probably like speak to this too, but we don't oftentimes paint old brick because it just locks in the moisture and then the mortar starts deteriorating from the inside. So it depends on the age of the brick and the type of mortar that is used. And somebody that would be able to answer that question is Michelle Duhan, because she deals with that all the time. And she can go out to your site and tell you what you need to do. But it's probably cracking because that brick probably did not need to be painted. Or they used like a latex-based paint when they maybe should have used a different type of paint. So it may be that the paint specification itself was incompatible with the brick, given the like moisture content of the brick. So I think that's more technical that I don't want to answer without seeing it. But I would say contact Michelle with Body Preservation for that. She could tell you for sure.
Thank you. That is super helpful. And I know that it does get complicated for people because it seems like a conflicting message where people say the brick was sealed, and then simultaneously people say, well, brick was sealed with stucco, and it was sort of,
Yeah,
it doesn't, it needs to be protected from elements as well. So I would say that with historic building materials like that, it is sometimes best to just contact a building, like a materials expert, and ask them about that. And they can sort of give you the specifics about that particular material and its age and its current level of degradation, et cetera.
exactly. That's a great answer.
Okay, so when you are painting interiors, do you find that there's any advantage to the quality of paint if you're using Faro and Ball specifically, or having it color matched by Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore?
Faro and Ball's paint, there's a reason it's so expensive. So the pigment in Faro and Ball's paint is like very high quality. They use more pigment per ounce than maybe not all of Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore's lines, but most of them. So if you are trying to match the color, Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore can get close, but the level of saturation and that Faro and Ball has, like side by side, you can tell a difference. So if you are dead set on that color and just that intense like richness that Faro and Ball has, here's my Faro and Ball. Like for instance, if you're gonna pick a Faro and Ball color that's lighter, so like they're white, so you could like really get away. I don't want to discourage the use of Faro and Ball because they're a great company, but if you cannot afford them, or you're just, I mean, it's a lot, but you just want to get a close, like almost match, the lighter colors are easier to do that with. If you're selecting something like their Studio Green, which is like a very intense color, or their purples. So they have one that's called, where is it? This Pelt color that has sort of like some red undertones, or the this black. Maybe go with Faro and Ball if you can, but test it. Like get Benjamin Moore to test it, or Sherwin-Williams, and kind of just put it up and see if you're happy with it. But the like scrubbability factor, it's really just more like an aesthetic thing. Try to test it and see what you think first, and then if you're not happy with it, go with Faro and Ball.
Thank you. Okay, what paint brand is the color Early Morning Mist?
Oh gosh, let me look. I think it's Sherwin-Williams. It's either Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore. I'm literally just Googling it. So it's Benjamin Moore.
Thank you. And can you tell us what the, on your last slide there, someone's asking what the house body color was.
The house body color on the last slide is Gray Wisp by Benjamin Moore, 1570. That's a great color. It's kind of like a pale sage. It has gray undertones. It's a good one. That's good for interiors too.
Great.
And also the cast iron color on here is really good for metal handrails. I used it for the front door, but it looks great on metal.
That's actually perfect and leads us to our next question. Is there a rule of thumb for choosing green or black when repainting original iron fences or gates?
So black is tricky because some blacks have some blue undertones and some have green. I always lean towards the ones that have, you may have, hear it referred to as like a Mobile green or a Charleston green, or sorry, Mobile black or Charleston black. They have green undertones. So you want to look for one that doesn't appear to be like an inky blue black. You want to look for something that has a super like rich dark green undertone, and those typically work the best because you don't want it to look like chalky. So there's actually a Faro and Ball color called Railings, and it is a little bit more of a green black. So some people can see those undertones. Some people will have a hard time with that. But I will say if you go to Helm or Sherwin-Williams, they will recommend, they'll say this is the one we use for Railings. This is the historic black color that we use a lot of.
Okay, one more sort of technical question, and then I've got some big picture stuff questions for you. Someone's asking if you find PPG to be a good paint for the exteriors.
So I've never specified PPG before. I do know that painters will take the colors that I've specified and use PPG as the manufacturer. And I've never had any issues with it, but I have never specifically specified a PPG color before. So I can't speak to the quality. In the past few years, haven't, like, no one's complained about it, but it's not something that I've ever specified myself. I normally stick with Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore.
Great. And then sort of the last, this is a big question. Someone's asking if you can tell us a little bit more about your professional and educational background. And then they're asking if you have any advice for designers trying to get into the historic preservation sector.
Yeah. So I always knew I wanted to do interior design, like from a small age. I was like building condos for my troll dolls and stuff. So I always knew that interior design was what I wanted to do. So I went to Auburn in 2001 and completed their interior design program there for my undergrad. And then I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and worked for a commercial interior design firm there. And while living in Charleston, I realized that historic preservation and design can go hand in hand, and you can actually get into the preservation field as a career. So I did a lot of new construction work while I was in Charleston for commercial projects, and then moved back to the Gulf Coast. I'm from Mobile, and went to Tulane's historic preservation program, which it's called Masters of Preservation Studies. It's in the architecture program. So I did that in 2009, and then stayed in New Orleans after that. So that's how my preservation and interior design collided. And I started my own company a few years after graduating from Tulane's master's program. But in terms of the second part of the question was do you have any advice? I just think using the resources that you have. So if you're in New Orleans, I mean, the PRC is wonderful. They have a lot of volunteer opportunities, but for design, the biggest, I think, help is understanding architecture. So I'm not an architect. I work with some wonderful architects. But being able to be a designer and have appreciation and understanding of architectural styles, and being able to use the correct terminology, understanding architectural styles and the importance of historical materials is important. So you learn a lot of that in the master's program, but so much of that I've learned since graduating from Tulane, just getting hands-on experience. So I think asking a local architect, or I actually don't live in New Orleans anymore, so I would love to help you, but I live in Tennessee now. So, but if you want to email me your information, I'm happy to pass it along to anybody that I know in the field in New Orleans that might be looking for an internship, or that could just let you tag along on site visits. But it's mostly in the field experience, and really studying and understanding the history of design, because that sort of puts you ahead of some people who maybe just don't want to take the time to understand what goes into construction. So having a construction knowledge and asking questions and being inquisitive has always been helpful. And I'm always the person that's what about this? What is, where did this come from? What does this mean? And just being inquisitive and trying to get as much information as you can has been really helpful. But I can talk to you more about it if you want to send me your email address.
Thank you, Brooke. That was a super thoughtful answer. The PRC is always so appreciative of, anyone who sort of wants to take the time to understand historic building materials and design. But when interior designers and decorators understand that stuff, it really does make a difference. Even just starting to talk about the question of when you paint brick and how really points to how these fields truly intersect in a way that is really important for people who own their houses and are trying to take care of them and also make them beautiful at the same time. So thank you. Yeah. One last super fun question. Someone would like you to name a couple of your favorite colors and manufacturers.
Oh gosh. Okay, let me go back to my slide. Okay. So, um, my favorite, okay. This question is difficult because every situation needs a different color. So we are about to buy and renovate a house up here. And so I have been thinking a lot about like, what would I put in my personal home? And I always like a green front door, like not lime green, but something that's like sort of a rich grassy green. And a lot of homes, there's a person that I follow on Instagram. His name is Brandon Ingram, and he's an architect out of Atlanta, and he does such a good job with new construction that looks historical. And his house it's like colonial, it's white, black shutters, and this like rich, I think it's actually a Farrow and Ball green color. I don't even want to guess because it might be wrong. But so that's sort of my favorite exterior color palette, is like just classic, tried and true white with black shutters. I love a dark dining room, so I'm probably going to end up using like a similar color. Now, I haven't spoken to my husband about any of these colors, so we'll see what he thinks. As many of you know, different people have different opinions about colors, but I'm probably going to use like this green in a dining room. I'm probably going to paint my daughter's room this like pale peach color, and I'll probably do the walls like a flat or a satin, and then I'll do the same color but in a semi-gloss on the trim. And I'll probably like mix it up with some cool like lighting from Anthropologie. My son's room, I'm going to do like a grass cloth wallpaper. I love like a deep coral, like not necessarily this bright orange, which I mean, I like that for a door, but like a richer color. We have some antiques, so I'm gonna think about what colors are gonna like just make those pop. And peaches and like oranges always look so pretty against wood antiques. And I'll probably do like a navy indigo batik, like my friend Danielle's bathroom that we painted together. I'll probably use something like that in a powder room. So there's just like, it kind of just depends on the client, but I've used almost every color under the rainbow. And for my personal house, I'm going to use probably that color palette, but I'll let y'all know. I'll post it on Instagram when I paint the house.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Brooke. This was a really fantastic talk, and I know I feel inspired to go change up some colors in my house now. So
Good deal. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.